Upstream. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Conformance subgroup meeting of SIG Architecture. I'm your host, Hippie Hacker, and just remember we are abiding by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which is be kind. And we will be recording this live. It'll be on YouTube later today if I can figure out what button to hit. I will go ahead and share my screen so we can look at the agenda today. And there we are. This is a sub-project of SIG Arch, so if you click on the top level, you can get there. There's our meeting information and requirements. We're going to talk a bit about some of our backlog on watches as far as how we do that. Please add yourself to the attendees notes. And if someone wants to take over as note taker, will be unable to do that today. Quick rundown of action items from last week is we need some tooling, actually a couple of tools. One of them was specifically for replication controller. And Clayton was willing to give a hand with that and did so as far as a bit of feedback, but there may be a bit more in the pipeline for that. This was an issue that we opened that has around the events watch tooling, and we have a small proposed solution that we'd love to get feedback on. We can go through that, but my suggestion is that we have some feedback from Clayton, and a little more feedback from the community would be great. This it affects at least 7 points on the board if we can find a way to for these expected watch events. And this is the general, maybe I got the link wrong actually, because this was supposed to be, there's another ticket for replication controller tooling, so that was this other link down here. This one is specific to replication controller tooling, so my apologies. And this PR, let's see where we are here. I got an LGTM from me, a review from Neolit, so we can look into that. Thank you, Neolit, for the review. And we'll go back and update that tooling, but this is quite a bit. I think I'm not going to go through the items at the top fully. I just want us to be noted that the action did occur. Thank you. And then I'm going to delete this other one here for the watch event because it was the replication tool we're talking about there. The other action item we had is when can we promote tests? And I went through and asked the SIG release team, and eventually this merged in to give us the new and updated release cycle. It's likely we're going to do 3 releases this year. And the tests need to be in by the July 16th for 119, and the test freeze on week 16 means July 30th being our deadline. So we have a few more June and a few more months to get that in. We would like to get a full list of behaviors so that we can start having a denominator for comparison. I think we're still working on that, and there may be another PR down below. On our numbers, we're actually down, and we don't show the up and down graph yet. It's just, instead of being plus 11, it's plus 7, and I think it's because we removed some tests. I just looked at this morning, so I haven't had time to see what the drop was. My apologies. But we will figure that out. So I think we'll go ahead and add AI. We're down a few points, and maybe the AI here is Y. One of the things affecting our numbers is we keep writing tests or looking at tests or endpoints that are not able to be tested either due to framework issues of others, and we need to start documenting that. So that we know. So we put together within API Snoop just a quick query of stuff that's related to volumes. And I just wanted us to, as a group, agree that these endpoints, and the selection here is when there's a path-like volume. So this exact list of 12 endpoints is not, at least for now, going to be part of conformance. And that means, as far as our denominator of things that we're measuring, you know, the ability to get to coverage on our endpoints, that we shouldn't be counting these 12. So two things. One, is this an accurate list that we're not going to be part of conformance for now? And that's for all of the ones in this list. And secondary, of everything in this list, how do we keep track of that other than a file and API snoop? Component status is where where the kind is component status. There's just a couple of those. This is only create and delete because node registration is handled over here. And then the last one is kind of like where we got information for that. I want to stop for a minute and let everybody have some time for some feedback on this one.
Oh, sorry, Hippie, can you explain the reason why we are excluding persistent volume claims from conformance testing here?
Sure, I can give a bit to that. I think it's due to lack of a way to test that's vendor neutral. The testing framework, go ahead.
Conformance tests are expected to be run against the cluster that's set up with default settings. And we have no way to guarantee that all Kubernetes clusters ever have persistent volume support. Like, it'd be cool if we could say every Kubernetes cluster ever is supposed to have at least local persistent volume support or mock persistent volume support or some kind of driver that exercises like the bare bones of persistent volumes and some of the expectations. But I think right now, and you're free to correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of up to each individual cluster provider to attach whatever class of persistent volume support and attach and configure whatever class of persistent volume support they want, whatever works best for them.
And Aaron, actually, there's a key point here too on, it's certainly possible for us to develop plugins that we install to test conformance of things like CSI and all of that, or to test these mechanisms. Like, there's no way to test CSI without installing some of these test providers. Does that cross the line that we had previously defined for like privileged and what's acceptable for conformance that would or would not be a profile? Because like, it would certainly be easy for us to add our own special local, like just a stock local volume provider, install it, add it to persistent volumes. Does that match the spirit that we've had for conformance, or do we have to put it into a bucket like a profile or something along those lines?
I believe if John were here, he'd be saying profiles, profiles, profiles.
And this is a great one, which is like, it's very difficult to test. But now I will say though, there's nothing that prevents many of these from being tested without actually having a persistent volume provider. Like the APIs can be driven directly by an administrative user. So that might be another option. Like you could create a persistent volume and then.
While that is true, I don't know if that's necessarily, it sounds like you're saying like, sure, we could exercise an API and see like 200 OKs come back. But I think the spirit of this is we want to describe the end user visible set of expected behaviors. When we attach a persistent volume, the pod should actually have a persistent volume and it should be able to write to it and read from it and things like that, which we can't exercise unless there's an honest to goodness persistent volume. So
well, we can through the extension mechanisms, but yeah, but then you can have a persistent volume with host path, although we don't really allow it. Not all platforms are going to allow it. So yeah, this is a really important one that's completely uncovered. And so what does it take to figure out whether this is a profile or just something that's super important that needs to have an optional behavior of being bypassed if you don't declare it. Like you can be conformant today without passing these tests. Would be we willing to add tests like this that exercise one if it's available and saying you've passed because you exposed persistent volume storage?
I think, I don't know, I feel like maybe this is a question I'd like to have John's input on to weigh fully, but because I feel like there may be such a thing that is useful as a Kubernetes cluster that supports kind of like stateless workloads without the need for persistent volumes. And I want to be able to say like, yes, that is a Kubernetes. I think the alternative perspective is you say, but Aaron, the majority of people who are deploying applications and workloads to Kubernetes want state. And so they need to store that in a persistent volume somewhere. And so to a lot of people, a Kubernetes cluster isn't really useful until it has persistent volume support. I hear that, but I feel like I'd like to use this as one of the great shining examples of a profile for like persistent storage, for like a stateful cluster or a cluster that really supports stateful workloads versus stateless workloads.
Yep.
And your point about maybe needing cluster admin privileges or privileged access, like I think that might be another, I think that's another thing profiles could enable us to do. It may be that we want to kind of revisit the tests that need cluster admin privileges and maybe put those into their own profile. As far as how to best document or represent these things, I don't have a great idea off the top of my head. I sometimes feel like the closer to your code, the better. But I also, I think like maybe for things where like you're not gonna touch it ever, like component status, we're not doing it because it's deprecated. Okay, cool. But for things like persistent volume, we're not gonna do it now, but we do think it needs to be covered under a profile or something. I wonder if you like link to, you know, issues that represent the follow-up work that's necessary, or that can provide like more context around why, so that the conformance group as a whole can like look at these issues and know like what we need to chew on.
My suggestion that ties that together to like a PR or something would be, we don't have the metadata around the PR, like we don't have tagging for operations yet. I tried to put a PR a while back around adding some metadata to tie, I think, operation ID through on the logging, but it involved updating the way that we generate our Swagger JSON to include some extra metadata. And that's the cleanest way to tie it all the way back to our code, is when we generate the definition saying these endpoints are considered, because now we got stuff in core, and we're at about 50% coverage on core, but there's at least the ones on this list, there's going to be another 20 to 30% of core that we're just not, that have this other path, and being super clear about that and tying it. So my suggestion is a PR that updates the way that Swagger JSON is generated, so that if there's when you go back in history, you look at why was it tagged this way, or it was a decision of changing the API definition.
I feel like with our desire to move to more behavior-based description and coverage stuff, that if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't want to invest too much time into plumbing this all the way through all of the tooling. It feels like it might be, I don't know, maybe a non-trivial lift. It sounds like what you're trying to do is kind of refine your definition of done for this particular piece of work. And so I feel like it's more appropriate for you to do the refinement on your end rather than pushing it through the upstream project that you are testing. And so I feel like something that describes like why you're filtering these endpoints out or whatever from your definition of done is maybe a more appropriate way of doing it.
to get that authoritative statement, we were bringing it up in this meeting, but would it be best to send an email with these endpoints and to like SIG storage, for example, just to make it's conformance, right? So it's kind of we're curating the definition of conformance, and how do I, in our definition of done, is this enough for us to have this meeting and say, I'm going to remove these 12 endpoints from our target?
I feel like it's enough. I don't know if you want like, I hate saying the word spreadsheet, but you could have a spreadsheet and you could have the list of all the endpoints, and you could highlight in green all the ones you got covered, and you could add a notes column and describe why you're not covering these, and then we sort of see how many remain.
Simplicity, and you saying that this is enough is fine with me, and we just have a text file in here with a commit that references this meeting to say that we have the total number of endpoints, total number of tested, and then we'll have this other number that is conformance plus the ones we're going to ignore. Yeah. So we'll, inside API Snoop, have a list of things that during this meeting we decided we're not going to use as a denominator.
Okay, yeah, as long as you can end up with a definition of done and what's been done and how far we are from it, that sounds great.
Cool. Just to agree on component status, read and list, because it's inconsistent. We're fighting for control of the status if we try to muck with it.
It's not that we're fighting for control of it, it's that component status is a deprecated resource.
Yeah, component status should not be part of conformance.
Yeah, it should not.
Okay. We will remove those endpoints.
Yay!
Yay! Two down. That was good. We got 12. We got 14 now. We're about to get 2 more. So this will be 16. It'll be the best meeting ever. We're not going to delete and create nodes because kubelet. I love that we have video so I can see people's reactions in their faces.
I do not have the world's best poker face. I don't know about that one.
All right.
Do you have any opinions, Clayton? I don't know.
I stopped paying attention for like 2 seconds. I'm super sorry.
It's all good. The endpoints around deleting and creating nodes, do we think that should be covered by conformance?
Interestingly, deleting a node is like one of the most catastrophic actions an admin can do because it is the defined signal for undefined behavior. You can treat anything on this node as it should have been shut down. I feel like this gets into the endpoint is interesting in the context of does a Kubernetes system behave correctly when you delete a node? So it's more of a behavioral thing, which is there's 3 things that should happen when you delete a node. 1, all the pods on it should get force deleted and disappear within a certain time period. 2, on some platforms, the node object might get recreated and there's like 7 bugs and 7 keps on like going and trying to like make this make sense for those cases, which I don't know if we want to get into or not. And then the 3rd one is, what does it mean? Like who should, like what the behavior of when it comes back, I don't know if what we can specify, but it is a pretty fundamental part of like the break glass node is gone and not coming back that we don't do a great job of exploring.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have enough information to be able to make a call today. Because like I agree, generally we try to avoid like really super disruptive stuff in our set of core conformance tests. So my gut tells me to exclude it for that reason.
This is definitely one of those ones that somebody's going to get paged.
This will wreck a cluster.
I would probably say we should treat this as a profile,
right,
and come back to it.
It feels like if I had a profile for like cluster admin things, this would probably be in there. So I want to like tentatively say that. I don't want to authoritatively say that.
Well, and like the fundamental thing too that this touches on is pod safety. And like pod safety is one of those fundamental guarantees that nobody cares about until their data gets eaten. And the basics of it is no two nodes in a cluster will ever have the same pod with the same name that thinks it's the same pod running on it. So like the kubelet the kubelet is the one who deletes the pod, not the control plane. So if they're partitioned, you got to wait for the partition to heal. So the kubelet's like, yep, this process is done. Now I delete. That allows stateful sets to work. And that allows things like read-write storage, like read-write many to work. So like iSCSI and Fiber Channel, those don't have any protections built into them. Cube provides the protections. If someone violates that rule, people running serious production transaction systems on Fiber Channel because they're crazy could actually have two pods thinking they're the same, and they had a guarantee that we didn't preserve. That's another behavioral one. That really does require disruptive action. So I think that's the same principle that Aaron highlighted before, which is anything scary or surprising to a customer or to a cluster user or cluster admin should probably be something separate to as avoid, hey, you must destroy workloads in order to test this function. Or you might generate an alert.
I remember a conversation we had a few meetings ago, maybe a couple of months ago, around should we be able to run conformance tests and expect them to destroy things, particularly for submission to the CNCF/Kate's conformance, give me my shiny badge. And that definition of conformance, I feel, should include surviving massive deletion of things in the way that Clayton's describing, not necessarily carved off into a profile. It's changing the expectations of people wanting to use the conformance tool as, is my healthy cluster okay? Versus, is my cloud provider providing the level of data resilience that I'm expecting from a Kubernetes cluster?
And things like virtual kubelet and other, there's definitely a lot of people out there experimenting. Certainly bugs in your container runtime implementation can invalidate pod safety guarantees. Like if Cryo, for instance, had a bug, completely hypothetically, where they don't tear down the network plugin before they tell the kubelet, yep, you've torn down the network plugin, then you can leak network plugin things and the node eventually dies. That part probably, that's getting into like just correct behavior, but the step back from that is if the container runtime does something wrong that violates a fundamental assumption of the kube user on that platform, that is also a conformance violation. It's not just, it's the whole system that they're testing for conformance.
I will add these notes to the removal of delete core and create core node for now. And we'll, I think but in addition to that, we're going to create, based on Clayton's feedback, a mock test that includes his feedback that we can, I don't want to move that one out of the triage column until we have the behavior, the conformance, what is it called, the behavior definition written to tie it to. Maybe that's a good one to tie into behaviors and get a more clear definition of, well, I won't say the P word, the profile. I did it. Does that sound okay? I'm putting that forward as a thought.
Sure. You are free to do that if you want. I feel like I want to warn you that this sounds like one of the trickiest, most tangled things. It may not necessarily provide you the most reward right now and may have to be revisited down the line.
That's why I'm phrasing it as we're not going to, we're going to say we're not going to do delete core node or create core node. We're going to remove it just like the rest of them. But we're going to document, because Clayton spelled it all out, we're going to create a mock ticket that's going to sit there in triage until such as we get a nice behavior system in place and we have something more defined on, are we going to destroy people's nodes?
Okay.
That is the list of 1, 2, 12, that's 16 points that we'll work on, we're going to gain back. Thank you for your time, everybody. Wow, lots of notes and changes. This is excellent. So for Rion and Berno, I think there's a way where you can get access to edit this doc I think you have to join a Google group. I'm not sure where that is off the top of my head, but we can look that up.
Look real fast. If you join the Kubernetes dev Google group, you get added access to this document. And then paste the link to that.
Kubernetes dev, then that's, wow, endpoints not to be tested. Thank you for all the notes. I really appreciate that.
Nope, that's the wrong thing. Let me try again.
And that was good. So the next part is the update and tooling. So this is not PRs that are tests. These are PRs that support tests. So I do want to go through these before we get too far. This is the watch event verification tooling. And this is just the issue in Kubernetes, I think, right? This is an issue. Can't see the URL bar, but I think it's an issue. And it's related to our API Snoop org file over here. And this is our, I think this is pointing back to itself here because our files, this is auto-generated. And we need to know that things happen in a particular order. And we want to collect and make sure that they're done. We're going to propose that we actually, Caleb, this is yours. Would you like to walk through with this for us? And I'll be your hands and move the screen for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. So this is just like a bit of sample code to exercise the behavior of retrying an event if it doesn't occur in the order which was expected. So at the moment it's just like a string, but this could be replaced with v1.event or whatever it is. And we're just expecting an event to maybe occur in the order of added, modified, deleted. And yeah, if you scroll down a bit, please. So yeah, we're running through and collecting the events as they occur, and then we're handing that off to this helper function, verify watch event order, which just makes sure that they run in that correct order, and make sure that they have the right amount of events, and then per the expected events, we're going to run through and check the actual events to make sure that they have the same value, and then just returning an error if there was one which occurred. And then you can see the output as an example of how it behaves. Yeah.
I feel like expecting the number of events you receive to be an exact number is probably flaky. I feel like I sent y'all a PR about some prior art for verifying this. Did you take a look at that?
Was that the thing with the PBD?
It used a function called check invariance, I think.
Can't remember, sorry.
There was something that was using like a I pasted it in the Kate's Conformance channel. It was something that used a list watcher to define list and watch functions, and then I think it used that to dump some events into an array, and then it checked the things it expected from those events. Let's ring a bell. Yeah, I think it's this.
See if I can find chat. Chat. I'm going to copy that to our notes.
I don't know. Sorry, I didn't have time to review this beforehand, and the way I would review it is by going and comparing all of this against all of that and seeing if I could refactor that to use this or whatever. Because it seemed like there was already prior art for doing this in the Kubernetes code base, but I might be completely wrong, and I don't want to derail the meeting diving into it.
I've just had a short read, and is the behavior that you would be wanting as to avoid flakes be so that it gets the right order, but there can be other things in between that could be not a part of what we're expecting, but that just ignores it. So it says we're expecting added, and then perhaps a delete comes up, but then we also want to modify after that. And so we're expecting that to be added and modified in that order.
Yeah, I think so. That
Okay.
sounds like it would be less flaky.
What happens if there is a delete after added but before modified?
In this case, since we're expecting it, we're in this case, since there's stuff which we're expecting, maybe it would just be ignored. But I guess it kind of depends how you've set up your watch, because the watches which I've set up in the various tests that I've put out, they just focus on the single resource by its name. So I kind of wouldn't expect there to be a delete and then a modify ever. So yeah, that would work well if it's going by label selector or something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take the notes.
Is there a way for us to test this, on the PR itself? I guess this is going to be quite small.
As in like rebase one of the PRs off of this branch and then wire some stuff up and then try to get it to work.
Mm-hmm. Because we have to see how it behaves in the test.
I think that's a really good idea. I think we should probably do that.
To be clear, our AI there is got a PR to implement above. Test the logic. I'll let someone else type that out. Is there anything else we want to cover on the watch event test verification tool? I will continue forward to this one. This is a separate, and this one is actually a PR, and it creates for a very specific PR that I think is one that's we need to update the test, and if we update the test, then we can let it soak for a while and gets, I think it's like 7 points. This is the PR. The changes add a patch or die, and this is when we had feedback from Neolit. Since we have feedback from the community on this one, I don't want to spend too much time going through it. But if this is your cuppa, would appreciate, because this will unblock about 7 points.
I only added some comments about cosmetic changes to the text. When you write an error, it should be in past tense in general. That's the whole theme of my review, I guess.
I just realized that with you.
Yeah.
Also, one thing about this is this was copied from some other resource which is some other resource which has the tooling available and this one doesn't. So if this requires some updating, probably also good that we take a look at the other ones as well. So then it's consistent.
What was
Yeah.
it based off of?
It might have been that pod distribution budget one. I
That
think it
one.
was.
PDB link, you think?
Okay.
Yeah, well, basically we should try when we add new code, the new code to be cleaner and potentially refactor code that already is broken in a separate PRs, I guess. It's
Yep.
not that this is broken, I just, I prefer the new code to be clean.
Do we need any clarification, Caleb, or are you clear?
Yeah, I can work through this. Sounds good.
Okay, we're going to move along. Thank you so much, Neelit, for that. Very, very helpful. And then the last thing we do on this is go through our project board. And we have a lot of stuff in the middle, but I'm going to focus on things on the ends because we want to get stuff all the way through the done and also backload the in progress board so that we say that these are okay tests to write. First thing is we got something in the promote. Yay for promotions. And there is a supersedes because we got a CLA from earlier. Thank you, Aaron, for submitting that. And it is important and soon, and we'll go down to the bottom and see how we're going. And we're just needing an approve and yep, so that is in the right place. And we can reach out to them. That would be great. Let's see if I can, it's 2 fingers. I'm learning how to use the magic touch thing on the Mac. This was a 2-week flake free from Julian. And I think it is, I remember looking at this just earlier. I think it is, we got a conformance GA parallel job fail. You think that's flake related, Aaron, or is that environmental?
I'm muted. Sorry. I was saying, is there a test grid link you can click?
Let's go back. How do you hit go back in the browser? Is that one here? And then that's on details, right? Or is that?
In the issue itself, maybe. Maybe when I said we need to hold for 2 weeks, I posted a test grid link.
Pulling it up now. Thank you, Aaron, for putting those there. They're super useful. I'd like to have them in the, I almost wish, pardon me, losing my voice today. It doesn't look very flaky to me.
Does it look? Yeah.
And then this
Seems
other one.
like it's solid green for the past 2 weeks.
All right. So I guess the only thing we need to worry about is on this conformant, we need to override on that kind GA only parallel.
It is actually, if you'll look closely, it doesn't have a little gray box next to it that says required. So this PR will totally merge even if that fails. Out of my paranoia, I'm going to retest it because that job's supposed to be verifying that no non-GA APIs are being used when running conformance tests.
Okay.
And the test that's failing has the word diff in it. I don't know. I forget if that's the test that this is trying to promote, but I'm just going to rerun it anyway.
All right. I'll revisit. We'll look at revisiting this in a day or 2 just to make sure that that job went through and that we can put it in the to approve column because it looks like it's soaked. And if it passes, then we're good. Let's go back to the board. We have some things that are in the needs review column. Rather than reviewing stuff that's here in progress, I'm going to skip all the way back over because we have new contributors and I want to make sure that we give them our time. So I'm going to close these last few windows so that they're really clear that we are focusing on the 2 triage column. I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to click on this one. And I'm going to click on this one. And I'm going to click on this one. And I'm going to click on, this is a PR. I'm going to leave that one alone for now. I just want to get new stuff into the queue. All right, let's go this far along. So this one is from Stephen. And Stephen, do you want to go through this, or would you like me to walk through it?
You can, it's pretty clear of just going through the process of, sorry, which one, this one at the very top?
It's okay, I can go through it and then next time. So the first thing at the top is our link to our files that create our process. And then we go ahead and create an issue out of that. So this is our approval issue, which is the current one we're looking at. We go through and create a selection statement for what to focus on. And the limiter here is pretty much focus on one endpoint, the delete collection namespace template. So one thing I wanted to check before we go any further, is this one we want to test? Or is this one that goes in the do not test?
I feel like we have talked in the past about not wanting to exercise the pod template resource. But yeah, like I would put this lower on, I would put this at the bottom of your priority list right now compared to everything else. The idea is, I think it's something like, we regret that we exposed pod templates as a bare resource and would have instead preferred that they were just part of the deployments and replication controllers and stateful sets and replica sets that use them as an embedded object.
Okay.
I might be misremembering.
I think you're right. We did say that we regretted it, and then we found out that people are using it in production, and that made us sad.
That is true.
And so
Okay.
then I think the decision was to keep testing them because people are using it, and we made it part of core.
You are correct. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay.
So
really, is delete collection the only thing we're not hitting for pod templates?
we're being really accurate and precise on selecting things.
Okay.
And Stephen, is that right? Because you're the one that's looked into this. You may have looked at the other parts of pod template.
There was already existing testing that I think that Caleb already hit for the other actions.
Okay.
So there was a lot of, when I was looking for endpoints, there was a lot of delete collection namespace ones that were missing. So that's the reason why there's about 3 of them.
Thank you, Stephen. We're basically going to create 3 pod templates, confirm that they were created, and delete them via delete collection, and confirm that all of them got deleted. Here's the working test without using the Ginkgo framework. And we've written a function that turns this into a Ginkgo test, which is nice. So the step from here to test is very short. We want to go through that closely now so we know, we agree. Basically, it's a pipeline from here to conformance if we look at this close enough.
Can you show the bottom where the delete collection is?
Totally. I will do that. We'll scroll down to here. And there's also output.
Time sleep in there. So I'm guessing your tool replaces the default namespace with the test namespace.
That's correct.
Okay.
Verify that. I'm pretty sure to verify that with Zach, that it replaces the default namespace.
And then the time sleep is jumping out at me as bad. Why is that triggering? Well, so time sleeps trigger me in general, but
it was probably a holdover from when I was doing the delete collection on a pod, so I can get rid of that easily.
You are sleeping to verify that the delete has been actuated, it sounds like.
When I was dealing with delete collection for a pod, there was it was the previous test that I did, so it was just a hangover from that. So it doesn't really need to be there.
Okay.
Cool. I have marked that here. If this test is written, we do increase by the 1 endpoint for, and that's it. So I'm going to say delete jumps out, delete, not delete. It was a sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep
I don't know. It just
jumps
looks. It looks to me like this is written assuming that everything is nice and synchronous and blocking. So like the delete collection call won't return until the collection has truly been deleted and all of the pod templates within there have been deleted. And so when you then list, you'll totally see what you expect. It may be that that takes some time and you'll need to do what we have done in other tests, which we have tried to write that watch event framework to help us do, which is you like watch the thing and then wait to see a delete event on the thing. And then you verify that your expectations hold true now that the delete event tells you the delete has happened. So like the concept looks great, but I feel like this may not just be a copy paste. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I already had discussions with Caleb about some of the watch stuff that he's been looking at. So I was just waiting for the tooling to be a little bit further along to make it easy for me to pick up.
Okay.
All right, we got that one. We'll go to the next one, which is also from Stephen. Thank you very much. We're going to focus this one on delete a collection of namespace pods. And I suspect, if I'm looking at a pattern here, Stephen, tell me if I'm wrong, you found there were a lot of collections that weren't actuated. And so some of this is repeating a pattern again.
Yeah, it's basically the same pattern for pods and also events as well as in the other issue.
So I'm okay like being kind of brute force about this and copy pasting stuff and following a common pattern, but I do feel like others might ask, is there a way if this is basically the same expected API behavior, regardless of what the underlying resource is there any way we could write this test so that it is resource agnostic? It's just something to consider. Like maybe, for all I know, there's somebody at Google who's trying to work on that thing, like auto-generating a bunch of test cases based on generic like API behavior of resources. I don't know. But I mean, if you're just changing the word pod to pod template and then to the word event, I think was the other one. Seems like it would be interesting to figure out if there was a way to parameterize this on the resource type.
Yeah, I can look at that as well.
Awesome. Then we're probably going to have the same thing for the collection of this. And I'm going to just take a note from this one and see a similar note in here. If we agree, I think it is the same, right? Yeah, the collection namespace.
Yeah, it's just for the events for this one.
Okay. Comment. And then we have another one from Rion. Rion, wow, 6 points. This will be fun. And this is nodes, which has a delete node, which may, again, earlier they were talking about what can we do and not do. So this one will need a bit of modifying. And this is Rion's first PR, or first creation. So he's looking at, I think, pardon me.
This one is specifically create and delete, and I think that's exactly what we discussed earlier. We don't want this, but we want it in the column as an option to say, okay, we do or do not want to do this in the future.
Correct.
I think that's that PR that warns us. Keep it in mind. Do we want to do it or not? So it's only hitting add and delete.
Node, and I think node status was there as well, wasn't it? In our and he didn't get to see this before the meeting, right? The this PR for what we're going to be.
I think node status is also in the triage column.
I'm trying to capture this correctly. We added it to the Caleb created a list of endpoints we're not going to hit, and I think node status was that. And I think we also looked at not doing node for now.
Node status wasn't in there, but I think I might have a PR already out there somewhere for node status.
No, it's also in triage.
Oh, okay.
And triage. So node status is okay, but I'm not sure about deleting nodes. Because I think you just, the selection that you were looking for here, is you just show me everything that doesn't hit volume that's part of node, and it's too wide a scope. And node status is already taken care of, and we're not going to delete nodes for now. So I think this just needs to be retargeted, like or closed. Node status is already in triage. Node is not going to be tested. Let's look at some other endpoints would be what I would suggest. And I'm going to close. Is this accurate?
I think
okay.
Yes.
Cool. And that stopped us from writing any test way ahead of anything. We agreed that that wasn't going to happen. So Bobby's got another one for looking at things that are daemon sets that don't hit volumes. And so we have replace, patch, read, list, delete. This is a +10. This would be a good one.
+5.
+5? Oh, okay. I just see the 10. Oh, that's what you're going to hit. And then at the end, it'll. So
I mean to filter them down closer to what it actually hits. That would be more useful to see.
It's good to know where we're headed, and then because you won't know what you actually hit until you write the test, because those are still untested, unhit, right? Because this is from untested stable core endpoints, and then you were able to choose out a set. In general, you want to walk through this, Caleb, since it's yours?
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's just the usual cycle of things happening that we have come to expect from the lifecycle tests. And this one also exercises the patching of, could you go back up to the notes?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Also, oh, no, actually there's nothing too special about this one. It's pretty normal. We're changing the container image a bunch because that's a pretty easy thing to do. And we've set out the labels and the label selectors. This test is pretty modular, so it's pretty easy to just change what resources, the specific bits of data at the top. Just creates it and then goes from there. We're using watches for this one, but once there's the tooling available, I'm sure we'll be able to update this one. And
my only comment here is I'm not sure how I feel about verifying the number of pods scheduled is equal to, sorry, the number of pods ready is equal to the desired number scheduled. That says the daemon set's doing what it's telling you it's doing. I'm less clear if that describes what an end user expects a daemon set to do. If I were, as an end user, I expect a daemon set to deploy a single pod on all of the nodes to which that pod can be scheduled. And so I feel like there's no way here where we're independently verifying, like, so I don't know if we have to go as granular as like what nodes should this not be scheduled on and what nodes should this be scheduled on, but I feel like maybe it's up to, maybe we want to compute the number of pods that we expect to see, or like the number of nodes we would expect this to be scheduled to, and verify it that way.
Would there already be a helper function for this, or would it just be list nodes where the there's no what's the specific word? There's no is it taint? No taint to say pods can't be scheduled, and then that's the number of pods we expect for that to be.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know off the top of my hand if there is prior art for this in the code base. I would, the way I would probably look for this is I would look at any of the scheduling tests and see how they do it. But I think they all expect to be run in serial. So maybe there are some other tests out there that look at it, because we're not necessarily trying to exercise the scheduling mechanisms here of like taints or node selectors, things like that. But I do feel like you don't necessarily have control over how many nodes are schedulable on a cluster that you're running this test. It could be that you're running against a cluster that has its control plane is deployed on some nodes that are explicitly marked with a taint to not schedule. Or some other taint that things don't tolerate typically. So you kind of need to, I feel like there's got to be some way to describe or express that. I may be sending you on a wild goose chase. You're free to tell me that I am, but I just feel like this isn't really describing, this is describing that the daemon say it's going to create as many pods as it says it's going to create. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that those pods are created one per node. And the nodes that it's scheduled to are the nodes that it should be scheduled to, if that makes any sense.
I follow, yeah.
I just wanted to say that I think we considered taints as disruptive, node taints, because if the framework dies, the taints remain on the nodes.
Right, but I think there's like a utility function somewhere in the test code base that's like, get me a list of schedulable nodes.
Oh yeah, I think there is. It's going to give you the list of nodes, and based on that, you can compare the names.
Yeah.
Be good to find that one. That's good. Any more comments on Caleb's +5 daemon set? It sounds like we do think it should go forward, so I'm gonna note that. And that was the main things. We're 5 minutes over time, and we didn't get to all of the meat in the middle of the actual.
I'm saying the concept of testing daemon sets sounds great, but that mock test is written is not how I would recommend we exercise it. So it's up to you whether you want to say, you know what, we're not going to move forward with this until we've kind of honed the mock test, or if you want to start iterating on it, you know, after the fact. Up to you.
There we go. Next conformance meeting. Or sooner if we, in general, it'd be nice to find a way to get a faster feedback cycle or loop, and I'm willing to schedule time with anybody who wants to spend time. So we have high bandwidth access to all of the II team. We're over on time, so I'm going to go ahead and give you your time back. But there are more things to triage and things in the middle that I'd love to spend time with anybody who wants to. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks for your time,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Stop share and